What's up, everyone? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I heard some really exciting news for me, at least, anyway, and maybe to other retro gamers out there, in a video yesterday by one of my favorite YouTubers and who is also my favorite retro gaming YouTuber. I'm sure chances are most of you already know who this is, Pat the NES Punk. Now, depending on where you live, that will be Pat the NES Punk for yourselves, but it's very rare you hear someone saying NES or SNES here in Europe. It's always just NES or SNES. It's just the way it is. Anyway, recently he authored and self-published his own book. Now, that book is basically a guide and a review to every Nintendo Entertainment System game out there. It's called Ultimate Nintendo, a guide to the NES library. Yes, I said NES that time, just because it makes more sense in the name of his book, because that's basically what it is. Like, you know what I'm saying. Back to the point. So he self-published that pretty recently, a couple of months ago. It's the entire first print is sold out. The second print will be slightly updated and due out early next year, he said. But someone followed a question up with him, and that would be, is there any possibility of a Super Nintendo version, say Ultimate Nintendo, a guide to Super Nintendo library? And he said he's heavily considering it. Like, he made a video on the entire thing, which I'll have in the description below. I definitely recommend you check it out. And in this video, like, I'm not gonna go through completely everything he says, but I'm gonna go through why I would be interested in it. I mean, he goes through the pros and cons. Obviously, he's exhausted from publishing this book, from editing, authoring, playing all the games for the reviews, what he had to write, etc., and going through all the process of, say, getting it printed, getting it manufactured, delivered, all of that. And not to mention all the conventions and stuff he's been doing in the last couple of months. He is literally exhausted, and I don't blame him. So Pat, in the odd chance you ever see this video, even though I am not over the toply interested about the normal NES guidebook, I can see the work you put in is just overwhelming and amazing, and there's so many people out there that love this book. So definitely what you've done for the community in both the book and non-book form is just amazing. But on top of all of that, he reckons that the Super Nintendo one would be the next logical progression. You know, you've done the Nintendo, next up is Super Nintendo, and he reckons as well that it'll be significantly easier to get through this time. For the main reason is, once you come at a project for the very first time, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much preparation you get going, when you come at a project for the first time, it's always the most work. And then when you come at another project that's very similar, the second time, it's significantly easier. You know what to do. You know how to space things out. You know who you have to contact, what you have to say, do, etc., So a lot of that, you know, who's going to be editing it, ordering it, blah, blah, blah. But it breaks it all down much easier. You don't have to worry about all this as much. Generally, it's quicker to do and more significantly higher quality and significant ease, basically. So he reckons that because of that, it's not going to put such a massive strain on him as the previous book did. And the reason why I'm really excited, now obviously chances are this would not be out until the very end of next year at the earliest. I know he kickstarted the one for the NES. I don't know if he would kickstart the one for the SNES, or I would assume so, but that's obviously much further down the line stuff. The fact is that he's talking about it. He kind of wants to do it, and he's heavily considering it. As well as, like I said a minute ago, the burden would be significantly less, because it sounded, the way he described doing the actual NES one just kind of sounded soul crushing, and I don't blame him for wanting a break. Now, the main reason I'm so interested in this is, there's a couple of reasons really, but one, the Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time. Not just when I made a video previously about the golden age of RPGs and JRPGs. It's not just about that. The other types of games, the quality of them, the style of them, as well as the graphics at the time as well. the Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time. It's got, as I said, it's got some of the greatest games ever made. My personal favorite game ever made, Secret of Mana, is a Super Nintendo exclusive. Well, it's a Super Nintendo exclusive. I was going to count some of the other Mana series games, but specifically Secret of Mana. So when you look at all of that and some of the other series that made significant impact on the Super Nintendo, not limited to, of course, but Mega Man X series. I realized there was the Mega Man series on the NES before it. Final Fantasy, same deal. You've got 4, 5, and 6 on the Super Nintendo, and you've got 1, 2, and 3 on the NES. But you get the idea. There's significant games on there too. More, I won't go into a huge list of them because I'll be here all day. I'm just going to throw in a Link to the Past as well, just because it's a Link to the Past. So, and Super Mario World. But God damn it, I'm just gonna end up trailing off on this. But so the main reason is that with all games of that quality and that level, I'm very curious to hear his opinion on them, or one of his colleagues, because as far as I remember, he did get a couple of other people to help him with certain reviews, mostly of games and genres that he wasn't too familiar with, and he wasn't sure what was good critically and what wasn't. So he got someone more familiar with it to do it, if I understood the way he worded it correctly. And one of the other main reasons, I've mentioned the quality of the platform in general. It's my favorite console. My favorite game ever is on there. But one of the other ones is when you take Pat and the writers he surrounds himself with, in the case of the NES book, or just in general for like his website or something like that, or any of the work he does, when you take into the quality of those kinds of people he works with, I would be interested to hear his and their opinion on the role-playing games and the Japanese role-playing games of the Super Nintendo. Now, what I would love in a perfect world, I'd really love to hear his take on them. I know he's not the biggest role-playing game fan, so I wouldn't surprise me if he outsourced those to someone else. But if he didn't, that would be brilliant. I'd love to hear his take on them. But again, at the same time, I would still be happy with hearing other people that he's associated with their types of thoughts and opinions on the role-playing and Japanese role-playing games of the Super Nintendo, as well as a bunch of others. There's tons of other games on the SNES that I absolutely love, and that I would be definitely interested in hearing people's opinions on. There's a few games I really want to see on there. I'd be really curious if you can get his hands on a copy of Soul Blazer, an English copy of Soul Blazer for that matter. The one that was only given in a couple of Scandinavian countries, and it's very expensive and very hard to find. So, I'd be curious to. I'm sure he can work his magic and get some connections, to get that done. But I'd love to see all that, and I really hope he does come out with one of these books for the Super Nintendo. If he comes out through Kickstarter with it, I will personally be pledging to that to get myself a book. If he does not do it through Kickstarter and does it through some other avenue, I will still buy one because I definitely want it. So the big thing is, what are you expecting from this book? Would you be interested in it? Would you like to see it obviously, who knows, maybe he'll do a Nintendo 64 one after it. But, what would you like to see in it? What would you expect from it? Are you like me? Are you particularly interested in one or two genres or one or two specific people's opinions, or what is it? Only time will tell. We still have probably a year at the very earliest. It's just a complete approximation, but I'd guess a year at the very earliest before this would possibly ever see the light of day in retail sales form. But yeah, so let me know what you expect in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter. Details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.